The explanation of all living things was first discovered by a man named Charles Darwin, who made the most remarkable find, which he called the theory of evolution, which explained how all organisms developed and changed through time from a common descent. This theory started in 1831, when Darwin was given the opportunity to go on a voyage and explore continents around the globe. It was a 5-year voyage in the HMS Beagle. Without this discovery, biology would not make a lot of sense when studying organisms. His most useful finds were found in South America, Africa, Australia and the Galapagos Islands. During his voyage, which started in England, he collected specimens of plants and animals which he used to compare and contrast how different species were the same and instead changed over many centuries. This theory was a massive discovery in science that explained how our world is shaped today. To begin this documentary, we must first travel back in time to the year of 1831, where evolution was first examined by Charles Darwin, who noticed a similarity between species that portrayed similar physical features.
After the first year of sailing across the seas in the year of 1831, our ship decided to stop on the 6th of January, 1882 on my first tropical island at the port of Santa Cruz, Tenerife Island. We were ready to leave the ship when we were stopped due to an outbreak in England. Crew members could have been affected, and we did not want to affect the people on the island. We only had to stay on the boat for 12 days, but our captain named Fitzroy was very impatient and gave us the order to continue, and we sailed off. I was quite devastated because I really wanted to see the island, but we had many corners of the globe to see. After several days of sailing, we arrived at Santiago in the Cape Verde Islands on January 6, 1832. I went ashore to walk around and examine different forms of life such as insects, animals and marine life. During my encounter with the island, I stumbled across a white band of shells, which is peculiar considering that they are usually below 45 feet below sea level. This was where I made my first discovery because these shells somehow changed their original habitat. The Beagle stayed on the island for 23 days. On April 3, 1832, our ship landed at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. During our visit, I decided to explore Brazil's tropical forest and vast amount of organisms that could be found on the island. 1832 April 25, I returned back to the ship with an abundance of specimens I collected from insects and plants. When I got back, I started to make notes about the characteristics of each specimen taken. On 1832 August 19, I sent all my specimens to Henslow in Cambridge, including rocks, plants, animals, beetles, marine animals and more. On 1832 August 22, I spent time collecting fossils for men in England who may be interested, which were unknown species known to man. During the final months of 1832, I gave my research to another man named Rev. Henslow. During the final months of the year of 1832, I continued my journey on the Beagle studying the change of organisms on Earth.
1833 January the 23rd. Our cold voyage mission had started on the Warrior Cove just off the Beagle Channel in Tierra del Fuego. We stopped a night to rest along with Richard Matthews and 3 anglicized Fijians, York Minster, Jemmy Button and a female named Fija Basket. We built small huts and planted gardens, and much of the cargo and provisions were left with them. As we traveled back east along the Beagle Channel, I was quite astonished and fond of the snow, glaciers, and the icebergs. The structures were phenomenal. After 9 days we finally returned to complete our mission, but only to find that the place had been looted by the native Fijians. I always had doubted that savages like these could become civilized. We were so distraught that Richard Matthews and I returned to the Beagle and left the 3 Fijians behind to conduct and complete the mission on our own. 1833 March the 1st. Our ship has finally just arrived at the Falkland Islands at Port Louis. As I arrived, strangely to my discovery, and the first news we received was to our astonishment, that England had taken possession of the Falklands Islands, that the flag was now flying. Not only did the natives' presence here on the island shock me, but also in the few of the past weeks I have been here, I have found marvelous fossils. I have collected many fossils over these few weeks. Each one I find is different from the other, but has some key components that resemble the others I have found. I spent weeks studying these fascinating fossils. The fossils are quite intriguing. They have such a well-preserved structure, and the outline of different plants and animals is so clear and well-portioned. Each couple of days my collection of fossils grows along with the questions that come along with them. Why are the fossils I find have such a striking resemblance to the last ones I found on the coast of South America, but yet they are significantly different? I have planned to conduct a comparative study between these fossils of plants and animals to answer the trail of my everlasting questions. 1833. Captain Fitzroy just purchased a schooner to aid in his surveying work. He named it the Adventure after a supply ship used on the previous Beagle voyage. There's one thing Captain Fitzroy did not do. He did not check with the Admiralty for permission to buy the ship, however. 1833 May the 1st. Since May 1st I had spent 12 days on an interior expedition with 2 of my hired gauchos and a team of horses to help continue with my research. We had been brought to Maldonado to continue our voyage as the Beagle returned to Montevideo. 1833, May the 22nd. I have returned to Montevideo. I have sent a letter to my sister, Catherine, and asked if father could willingly provide the funds for me to hire a servant who can work for me at a rate of about £60 a year. A man on board that goes by Sims Covington was the odd job man. He had volunteered to be my servant for the voyage, and I promised to pay him £60 as his yearly salary. I had recently spent a few weeks teaching the Covington how to shoot and stuff animals. This also allowed me more time to make observations and theorize and reason about what I had seen. 1833 July the 18th. I had just received more mail and a third load of specimens that was sent to Reverend Henslow. This shipment consisted of about 80 species of birds, 20 quadrupeds, 4 barrels of skins and plants, geological specimens, and some fish. I had been getting really tired of my research in South America and wanted to see the Andes Mountains on the west coast.
August 3rd. In the warm month of August, our Beagle arrived at the Rio Negro River. I decided to go on another expedition on horseback upstream just up till the town of Patagones, then overland to General Juan Rosa's camp, which is on the Rio Colorado. 1833 August 13th. About 10 days later, on August 13th, I finally arrived at General Rosa's camp. I received permission to overland to Bahia Blanca. During this time, I spent my days riding on the plains. My nights were spent drinking, smoking cigars and singing songs with the gauchos. One day, while staying at the Bahia Blanca, I discovered the fossil of a large animal. I could not identify the animal at all. This fossil was similar to the one I found on the island of Santiago. It was located below a layer of white seashells, but now I started to question why that fossil ended up below an ocean deposit. 1833 November 2nd. Around 3 months later, I left the Buenos Aires at the time of much civil unrest in the city. I decided to join the Beagle at Montevideo, so I boarded a packet ship. 1833 November 12th. 10 days later, the 4th group of specimens had been shipped to Cambridge. This group had about 200 animal skins, some mice, a jar of fish, insects, rocks, seeds, and my collection of fossils and geological specimens. 1833 November 14th. At this point, I was almost obsessed with fossil collecting. I was told that large specimens could be found in the Mercedes region of Uruguay, so I decided to explore it. I had to travel by horseback instead of by boat due to the flooding of the rivers. This caused much delay. When I was traveling back to Montevideo, I came across the head of a hippo-like animal. It was a fossilized toxodon. 1833 November 28th. Now that I was back at Montevideo, I couldn't wait to get back onto the Beagle, even if this meant I would be getting seasick.
We have seen Charles Darwin's outstanding journey and research through his years of 1832 to 1833. But he still has a long voyage ahead as he will circumnavigate the globe with Captain Robert Fitzroy and unfold his ideas to build upon his theory of evolution into his book The Origin of Species.